How's it going, everybody? This is Rusty here at FCP Euro, and today we're here to show you guys how to install the actual steering wheel control buttons and getting rid of the haptic feedback in your Mk8 Golf R and GTI. In front of me on the table, we do have some genuine parts that we're going to be installing in this Golf R. The buttons, which look very similar to the Mk7, but are also now commonly found in the Mk8.5. As we have been very frustrated with this kit, Volkswagen has listened and backdated the car for us as well. So we have a 22 Golf R behind us, and we're going to be installing the 2023 Golf R buttons and trim panel. Now, this is a not exactly traditional DIY for us here at FCP Euro. It's not exactly a maintenance item. However, the symptoms may include a frustrated driver. If you enjoy the haptic feedback buttons, just stick around so that we can show you how to remove them and install them if that changes, and the replacement will go very similar if you have a defective button in the future. One thing to keep in mind is the trim will be changing colors from the gunmetal or dark gray that is currently in our vehicle, as this is the only one available at this time from Volkswagen. And then the buttons are actually going to be losing the R logo button in the corner, which is really only a hotkey for changing your sport mode and your comfort mode on the vehicle on the fly, which can still be done through the infotainment. So we're really not losing anything with what we're gaining from this button feedback. So I'm really excited to see how this goes together, and let's go ahead and get into it. For this job, we're not going to need too many tools. However, it is going to be handy to have a couple additional things here. I do have some painter's tape. I'm not sure if I'm going to use it, but I'll explain in a little bit why it may be handy to have that. A pair of needle nose pliers if you do not have the fuse puller in the vehicle, a 90-degree pick, a 10mm socket, a socket wrench to drive that 10mm socket, a T9 Torx driver, which is not something everyone will have, a small mirror, and a radiator pick, something like this, or maybe even a screwdriver that you've bent 90 degrees. And most importantly, you're going to need a good high-powered flashlight, because it is a little bit difficult to see those clips on the back of the airbag. And with that, now that we know what tools we need, let's go ahead and get these buttons out of the steering wheel. And now for starters, we're going to go ahead and get the hood open. Coming over to the driver's side of the car, we do have the fuse box right here next to the ECU and battery. There is a couple of clips here. We just want to push them towards the center of the fuse box, put that cover off to the side. There is a handy little fuse puller in the fuse box most of the time, if it hasn't been misplaced already. And there's a 15 amp fuse in position F9. We're going to pull this fuse out. Make sure you don't lose it. This fuse is going to disable our horn. As this vehicle is keyless ignition, we are going to have to turn the steering wheel a couple of times, which we're not going to be able to have battery power for, because we're going to be disconnecting that to get the airbag out. So stay tuned, and we're going to catch you guys in the car in a second. Now we're back in the car, and before we start disassembling the horn, let's obviously make sure that that fuse that we disconnected was correct. Keep in mind, between Golf and Golf R, there may be some different variations of which fuse to pull out, but again, ours was the F9 in the engine bay fuse. Typically on most Volkswagens, the horn is disabled when the key is not on, but for whatever reason, the Mk8 actually has horn functionality with the key off. So that is again another reason why we need to disconnect that. But let's go ahead and get the steering wheel into a little bit more accessible position, dropping the steering wheel lock, pulling it out and dropping it down. Then I'm going to take a radiator hook or a pick, whatever you got to use, turn your steering wheel 90 degrees. There'll be an indentation on either side where you can kind of get a hook underneath and gently push up, releasing that top trim. There'll be a couple of hooks in the back here. You're going to want to pull it towards yourself and flip it back and up and out of the way. Then what that's going to do is give us a little bit more access to the clips behind the steering wheel to release the airbag. Might be a little bit difficult for us to show you, as I'm going to have to use a mirror for myself to see it as well. So there's going to be a clip at the 3 o'clock position, the 6 o'clock position, and the 9 o'clock position. Traditionally, most airbags in Volkswagens have only had 2. This one has 3. I have the radiator pick behind one of the clips. And once that airbag is released, now we can go ahead and disconnect the battery. It is in your best interest, once you disconnect the battery, to let the vehicle rest for about 30 minutes, just to make sure that any capacitive discharge that is still in the airbag system has dissipated. So we're going to go ahead, disconnect the battery up in the engine bay, let the vehicle rest for a moment, and we'll come back and disconnect the airbag. And now with a 10mm on a 1/4 inch wrench, I'm just going to go ahead and loosen the battery terminal on the negative side. We can loosen up this connector to give us a little bit more slack. Just go ahead and tuck this behind the battery here, or use a strap to kind of hold that out of the way while we're doing some work inside the vehicle. But we'll wait about 30 minutes to make sure that there's no capacitive voltage still in the airbag system. And now that we've let the vehicle sit for a little while, we can go ahead and safely release the airbag unit. Don't pull too far, as it is still connected. You're going to want to release the white lock on the yellow connector that is clicked into the clock spring behind the steering wheel. Pull that lock back, pushing the tab on that white lock, and you'll notice that there is still one additional connector on the side here. All right, this small connector on the left side of the haptic buttons, we're just going to have a small tab right here and gently pull that out, and it keeps locking and engaging, but there is a very small tab on the back side of that connector. We can go ahead and set this off in a safe place. Make sure you put it with the airbag facing upwards. God forbid this thing does have some voltage left in it. You're not going to want this thing to launch off the ground. So we're going to put this on the passenger floor with the Volkswagen symbol facing up. Once we get our airbag out of the way, we are going to start disassembling some of this trim. Our Golf R does have this nice piano black and blue trim at the bottom of here. We are going to want to pull this straight up. You can certainly go ahead and use a 90-degree pick to carefully release it from behind. I'm going to try to do the old grip it and rip it, and basically bending out these two tabs and kind of flexing it slightly towards you will allow for these two tabs on the outside to release, and then pulling straight up, careful not to break the tabs on the bottom. I want to set this off to the side, and now we're almost ready to get rid of these silly buttons on the steering wheel that I can't even tell what they are until they're on. And now that we have that little trim out of the way, we are going to go ahead and remove this whole trim with the buttons. Keep in mind, what I'm about to do is not by the book, but it's really the best course of action removing this. If you're having difficulty with this next step, you can certainly put some painter's tape around the outsides, using a small plastic wedge to get underneath the trim and lift it off the steering wheel. Otherwise, grip it and rip it. And once you've released that trim, you are going to have a couple of harness connectors on the side. We're going to go ahead and push the little tab on the top of that. You may even need a pick to make a little bit easier of a release. Careful not to damage those connectors. Now we've got the trim out. We do have a couple of small Torx bolts. We're going to take this back over to the bench, swap this over to the new trim. We're really going to just take the pieces of hardware out and swap that over, as we do have new buttons and a new trim. So let's go on over to the bench and get this going. Now with the T9, we're going to go ahead and release the 6 screws on the back side of the steering wheel trim. They are not very tight. I would not recommend using any electric impacts or ratchets or anything like that. A simple Torx screwdriver will work just fine. And once we've removed all 6 of those screws, this is no longer useful to us, so we're going to set this off to the side and save that for when we might sell the car. But enter new trim and the buttons we've all been waiting for. We are going to drop these buttons into the same orientation that the original ones were, and make sure that this ribbon cable gets routed into these clips up above. So I'm going to start on my left side here, which is the right side of the steering wheel, and then we will ensure that this ribbon is routed right in like that. Make sure you get it all the way down and underneath, not kinked, twisted or anything. Make sure that the ribbon is inside of all of these top and bottom little clips and is behind these little arrow style clips on the top of the steering wheel, because when this is installed, these are going to get engaged into the steering wheel, and you just want to make sure that none of this gets bound up in there. So once we've confirmed our fitment and making sure everything is going to sit well, we're going to go ahead and put those screws back into this before putting it back into the car. They are a little small, so you might want to have a magnet handy. And before we give these a final tighten, make sure that all the buttons are accessible, everything fits pretty well, making sure that the ribbons are still in good shape. And then we're going to just go back and give them a final tighten up. Torque spec on these is about 1.5 Newton meters. It is a metal screw into plastic, so just use your better judgment. Make sure that the buttons aren't loose in the trim, and just give it a final tighten to flush on that button. Again, doesn't have to be super crazy. That's why we're using the screwdriver, to make sure that we don't over tighten these. Let's go ahead and get this back installed so that we can go adjust our volume and cruise control the right way. All right, once you have your steering wheel assembly back in the car, we do have those two small connectors. Keep in mind that the orientation on the driver's side or left side of the steering wheel will have the same connectors. There's one that's going to be missing, so pay close attention to that. There is a 3-pin, a 3-pin, and a 2-pin, and we have a 2-pin connector. Nope, we have two 3-pin connectors. So there's a slight variation in the connectors, so you can't mix them up, but you will have one empty connector on either side of the steering wheel. Don't be alarmed. It shouldn't have any effect on the usability of this. So the connector with the two blue wires, it is a 3-pin connector, but there's only 2 wires present. That one is going to go on the bottom left 3-pin connector. Gently press that into place. Careful, they are small and fragile. Give it a slight tug. Careful not to pull on the wires too much. And then the connector with the black, yellow, and red wire is going to go on the upper 3-pin connection. Again, making sure that that fully engages. And then you'll have a small provision to tuck this wire harness back in the steering wheel, making sure it doesn't get caught on anything when it goes back into place. Obviously, as it gets closer to the steering wheel, you'll have that ability to tuck that in. So once everything's lined up, there's just a series of dowels that we did pull off of earlier. Get those lined up, pushing it into place, keeping in mind that that ribbon cable can get caught and twisted, so watch that as it goes in. And just kind of go around the steering wheel, pressing those in until it engages nicely. All right, so you may need to install it and pull it out a couple of times to ensure that all of the posts and dowels line up in the steering wheel. The steering wheel does have some foam receiving portions of it, so it does make it a little bit difficult to fully engage that. But once you get it in there, it is very obvious how it fits and when it doesn't. So making sure that this wire harness that we had adjusted is tucked back into the foam here as well, steering clear of any airbag after we install it. All right, once we have that trim nicely fitted, again, make sure that wire harness is routed out of the way of the airbag, and then we're gonna go ahead and put our trim in. Whether yours is a GTI or an R, it will slide in the same way. Keeping in mind that you do have some tabs to line up on the bottom as well as here. Do not force it. It should click into place like so. Make sure that that is fitted, and boy, that already starts to look good. So let's go ahead and grab our airbag. Careful that that harness is routed correctly as well. We are going to have the one connector on the left side of the steering wheel, as well as the airbag to clock spring connector. So we're going to engage that small one first. The connector that goes onto the steering wheel controls on the side, make sure that that firmly engages. Give it a little bit of a tug, not too much, just to make sure that it is firmly in place. The yellow connector going on to the clock spring there from the airbag, making sure that the white lock is still out. Push on the body of the yellow, not the white. First engagement, second engagement there, and then I'm just going to leave this here, and we're going to turn the vehicle back on before fully engaging the airbag to make sure all of our buttons are operational. So let's go back up to the car, connect the battery, and we will make sure that this all functions perfectly. All right, we're going to go ahead and put that battery terminal back on, put our connector back on as well, 10 millimeter, and we're just going to snug this one down, about 5 Newton meters plus or minus 1. That feels like about 5. Put our horn fuse back in just yet. Again, we're just going to go and make sure everything is operational. So because we had that driver's side airbag out, it would be wise to use something like a stick, a broomstick, or something like that. If you're doing this at home and you've never removed an airbag before, it can be a little daunting. So by the broomstick, I mean using that to key the vehicle on. However, I'm going to go through the passenger side and key the car on, make sure that the airbag doesn't deploy safely, and then come back around to the driver's side and check button functionality. So obviously, since we had our battery disconnected, we have a whole bunch of lights on the dash, traction control, some TPMS lights, all sorts of lights are going to be illuminated. Don't be alarmed. A lot of those will go away once you drive the vehicle down the road. However, the functionality of these new buttons without any coating or anything like that is operational. So for a super simple DIY, plug and play, everything good to go, this is a really nice little backdate or future date. I don't know what to call it because we had buttons before. We've got buttons again. Just leave the buttons. Just leave the buttons, please. We want buttons. Quite simply, we just want to go ahead and re-engage the airbag. Keep in mind, we don't have the fuse for the horn in place. So click it in, make sure that it sits nice and seated. Then we do have that trim on the top. You're gonna have two like half moon looking little half circle clips on the back. Those are gonna go into the hooks on the bottom of the steering column cover. So once you get those engaged, everything will line up nicely. Pushing from the top of that, everything will engage. Check your seams, check your sides. Throw the steering wheel back into place. Then we'll go ahead and put that fuse back into the fuse box and ensure that the horn still operates as well. Make sure your horn works before covering everything up. Looks like we're good there. Go ahead and refit your fuse box cover. All right. Now, aside from a bunch of errors that I mentioned on the dash that will go away once you drive the vehicle from having the battery disconnected, that pretty much wraps up today's DIY. I hope you guys enjoyed today's video, and I hope you guys enjoyed the fact that we have buttons again. If you like this video, don't forget to hit that like button down below. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, drop them down in the comment section below. And don't forget to subscribe because we'll have plenty more videos on this vehicle and many others like it. Thank you guys so much for watching. We'll catch you on the next one.